Bava Batra, Daf Nun Aleph Amud Bet and Nun Bet Amud Aleph. A suspicion is not an assumption. Ein מקבלין פקדונות מן הנשים. The difference between a professional and an amateur lies in the professional's ability to understand the differences in nuances that an amateur can't notice. A professional musician can hear nuances in differences between notes that the amateur can't hear. A professional writer understands the nuances between synonyms that the amateur thinks mean the same thing. A professional artist can understand and see nuances in colors that the amateur looks at and thinks it's the same color. You see green, you see blue, but to the artist, they're completely different colors. They understand nuances, and so in learning as well. The difference between being professional and not is in the nuances. And not just the nuances in halakha, but also the nuances in life, which the Torah teaches us, Gemara teaches us to become sensitive to nuance. Sensitive to nuance in halakha and sensitive to nuance in life itself. So looking at suspicions and assumptions, we don't always understand the differences. Do you suspect somebody of something, or do you assume that somebody did something? There's a huge difference between those two. When is it suspicion? When is it assumption? And what does suspicion trigger and what does assumption trigger? By looking at the way a Ritvo understands a Rashbam, we'll understand this much more deeply. And in the process, we'll also see how the later generation Rishonim and then the Acharonim help us understand the nuances which the early generations took for granted. And that's why the Rashbam is longer than Rashi. Rashi is very short, and we've pointed out on Bava Batra we've got the Rashbam. He takes longer to explain because he explains nuances which Rashi assumes that we understand, but we don't always understand. And here we've got a Ritvo explaining a Rashbam more than 100 years before him, explaining and helping us understand nuances that we might otherwise not really get. The Gemara that we're dealing with is a din that ein מקבלין פקדונות min hanashim. And also not from Avadim and Tinokot, but let's just work with Nashim. So we're back to the Swiss bank account of yesterday, but you're the banker this time. And a woman turns up with a whole lot of cash in a suitcase, and she says, please open a Swiss bank account for me. The din is, you've got to say, sorry ma'am, can't do it. And she'll say, are you being discriminatory against women? And you'll say, kind of, not women. We don't mind taking money from women, but not from married women. You can imagine doing that today. But that's the din. Don't take a pikadon, you don't take a cash deposit from a married woman. Why not? We'll see. Kibel minaisha. What happens if you weren't present when this woman turned up with her suitcase? Your clerk, your teller was present. And he took the suitcase of money and opened a Swiss bank account for her. You now going through the day's business and you see your clerk took a deposit from a married woman. Yarzil liisha. You take the money, you call up the woman, you ask her to bring a suitcase back, and you fill the suitcase up with the money and you send her home with a bracha. If she's dead by the time you want to try and give it back, then you give it back to the husband. Says the Rashbam, why do you not take money from a married woman as a deposit from a married woman? Because considering the kind of tensions we've been talking about the last few shiurim, created by the fear that inevitably exists in a marital relationship, or can and in some ways almost should inevitably exist, not the fear, but we've talked about the awe that there should be, the covered towards her and the amor towards him are the two emotions that keep the marriage together. So if there's amor, you're on the borderline of fear. There's awe, always on the borderline of fear. If you step over the borderline, the woman becomes afraid of her husband. If she's afraid of her husband, she starts putting money away, as we learned yesterday. She starts answering questions in ways that he wants to hear in rather than in ways that are true, and so on. So here, in such situations, it's often the case that the money, if she brings it to and wants to open a Swiss bank account, and you ask her, do you want your husband to be a co-signatory on this? And she says, absolutely not. You might consider the possibility that the money actually is either his money or their joint money. And she's protecting herself. She's worried that he will be nasty in the event of a divorce, and she's putting the money away for her own future. That's what you might say. That's the reality of it. You have to be suspicious of that. And by taking the deposit, you could be helping her steal from her husband. And if you don't take it from her, you just say, sorry ma'am, we can't accept your money. She might take the money back and return it to where she stole it from. So that you don't get involved. You simply say, sorry, we can't take it. You hope that she'll give the money back. You're not involved. You haven't helped her in the theft, if it is a theft. If it isn't a theft, you've also done nothing wrong. She'll go to another bank. But it is a theft, at least you've had nothing to do with it. So in that case, what do you do if you did take the money? If we're assuming that she might have stolen it, or we're suspecting she might have stolen it from her husband, and your clerk took the money and you only realized it later, what is the din? Surely you should give it back to the husband? No, Yarzil Isha, says the Rashbam, Velo lebal, de'ein lanu lahachazika b'gnevata. Because you can't give her a chazaka of Geneva. You can't assume she's a Ganev. To give the money back to the husband, you're assuming that she's a thief. You're assuming she was dishonest. You can't do that. So here we see the difference between suspecting and assuming. If you assume that she's a Ganev, you've got to give the money back to the husband. You've got to act, you've got to do something, you've got to return the money to the person from whom you assume it's been stolen. But if you just have a suspicion, you hold off, you do nothing. When you suspect, you pull back. When you assume, you act. That's what we begin to see. The Ritva asks, he doesn't put it as a question, but if you'll see in the words, you'll understand why I'm learning it as a question. He brings Rabbeinu Shmuel v'Ri Pirshu. And he brings the Rashbam and Ri, and he says, Mishum de lo l'sayeh yedei ovre avera, because the reason you don't accept the money into your bank is because you don't want to help her in a possible theft. De al harov mishel bal not lemotam. Because mostly, a woman who turns up at a Swiss bank with a suitcase full of cash has taken it from the household money, from the joint money, or from her husband's money. What do you notice the Ritva adding? The word rov. The Rashbam did not say that. He just said, maybe she stole them. Says the Ritva. The Rashbam says, so you see he's teaching us how to read the Rashbam. Although the Rashbam says, you might think maybe it's a possibility that she stole it. Says the Ritva, ala rov, no, there's a rov. In most such cases where a woman turns up with a suitcase of cash at a secret Swiss bank, in most cases there's something fishy going on. Where does the Ritva get from the fact that it's a rov? He gets that because otherwise how do you understand the Rashbam? You can say maybe she stole him. Then a banker can't accept money from anybody ever. Because you can always say, maybe it's stolen. You don't have to be choshesh for Geneva. You don't always have to suspect that money has been stolen. When do you suspect? If there's some kind of a rov, there's some statistic or something about human nature or something about the nature of society, something has to give you reason to doubt. Says the Ritva, therefore, in learning the Rashbam, there's a nuance here. Although the Rashbam just says, you need to understand that's because of a rov. In that case, asks the Ritva, why if there's a majority of cases, a woman who turns up, a married woman who turns up with a suitcase of cash at a secret Swiss bank, in most cases she's taken them from her husband and she's putting them in her own secret account for her security. In that case, what should you do as an honest banker? You should accept the money and pick up the phone to the husband and say, if you're missing $1 million, I've got them. And return them to where they belong. You should get involved. You should return the Geneva to the owner. Says the Ritva, beautiful. Ika mishum gilui sod, you're a banker, not a judge. She's taken you into her confidence. It's not as if you're in Beis Din and he's claiming $1 million and you know where it is. It's not as if you've caught her red-handed. You wouldn't have known. She has voluntarily come to you as her banker and said, I trust you with this money. And none of your business where it comes from. You're a Swiss banker, you don't ask questions. You suspect because of the rov, but you can't break her confidence based on a rov, says the Ritva. That's an amazing. Just the fact that generally most cases it means that it's stolen, but you don't know that. So you shouldn't accept the money, but if you've accepted the money, you certainly don't accept it and give it to the husband. That's certainly not something that you do. So what's the big question then? If that's how we understand it, if we understand the Rashbam, the way the Ritva has learned the Rashbam, then the next piece is difficult. Yarzil Isha, back in the Rashbam, says that if you did take the money, you return it to the woman, v'lo lebal, and not to the husband. She doesn't have a cheskat geneva. That's difficult. Rosh Yeshiva Rabbi Mishkovsky in Mishnah Selio and Sanhedrin explained in many places, he used to speak about it often, the differences between a rov and a chazaka, and a rov deleta kaman, a rov which is a general statistic. It's not that you have 9 kosher shops and 1 treif shop and you don't know where the meat came from. You know there's 9 and 1, the numbers are accurate. There's another kind of rov, deleta kaman, where you have a statistical majority. A statistical majority, Rabbi Mishkovsky explained in the name of Reb Chaim Volozhner, that creates a chazaka, that entitles you to make an assumption. So what is the assumption? Then if that's so generally we're saying, according to the Ritva, generally, if a woman comes with a suitcase of cash, she's taken it from her husband's assets. If that's the general situation, if that's the statistical average, then there is a chazaka. Then you're allowed to assume. Where does the Ritva get it from? That de'ein lanu lachzika b'gnei vata. You can suspect, but you can't assume. If your suspicion is based on a rov, on a majority, which the Ritva says it is, why can't you assume? That's the nature of a ruba deleta kaman. So the Ritva brings the Ri, who has a different answer to that, and then he rejects the Ri, but he doesn't bring the Rashbam, and then he explains it. And he says, the sof sfeikahu. The end of the day, it's still a safek, it's still a dat. Dahavalek a safek hinuach, which is like you find a Metzia. We go back to Metzia Daf Chof Hei, and there's the case you find little birds, and you're not sure if they belong to somebody and they were put there and you just happen to stumble across them and he's going to come back and fetch them, or if they've lost, they're just birds of Hefka, they don't belong to anybody, they're lost birds, in which case you can pick them up and take them. And since it's Safek Hinuach, you don't know whether they've been specifically put there or that they've just found their way there, these little birds. The din is you take it back to where you took it from and you leave it there, so that if he comes back, he gets it, if he doesn't, but you don't take it, you take it back from where it came from. So here too, give the money back to her, let them work it out. You keep out of it because you're in doubt. You can't judge this case. You have a suspicion, but you don't have certainty. You remain in doubt. So my question comes back, how can the Ritva say you're in doubt if he's already said that ala rov mishal bal notlim? If there's a rov, there isn't a doubt. Rov clarifies doubt. If you have a majority, there's no longer a doubt. Why does the Ritva say you're still in doubt, and that's why you give it back to her? And it's possible, what I would like you to think about is, it's possible that the Ritva is working with an idea that is introduced to us by the Rashbo in Masechta Chulin, and we use this in halacha every day. The din is that when you shecht animals, you've got to check for certain diseases in the lungs of the animal and various other parts of the animal. The Gemara says, and the Rashbo brings, but most animals aren't diseased, so why don't we rely on the Rov? The fact is, you can drink a glass of milk. Why can you drink a glass of milk? Maybe it comes from a cow that was treif. Maybe it comes from a cow that had a disease. But most cows don't have that type of disease, so you can drink the glass of milk. But when you've shechted the cow, and there is a way to check, you can check the lungs, which is what the shochet has to do. Every animal that he shechts, he slaughters, he's got to check the lungs and make sure that it doesn't have these various different types of lung infections and diseases, inflammations. Why? Ask the Rashba, but the majority of animals don't have it, so why are we even checking? Answers the Rashbam in one of his answers, Yesh mefarish mipnei shesirchot hare'ah davar matsui ulmiut matsui chashashu. The Rashba introduces a principle which we have throughout Yoredea. That's why we check lettuce. The majority of the lettuce leaves don't have bugs. Why are we checking it? We're checking it for a mi'ut hamatsui. There's enough of them that do have bugs that since you can check, you check. What is the enough? What is a mi'ut hamatsui? There's a big discussion, 5%, 10%, that doesn't depend on percentage altogether. The poskim deal with what a mi'ut hamatsui means. A mi'ut hamatsui means an existent minority. It's not an irrelevant, let's say a relevant minority. It's true the majority of animals don't have the disease, but there is a relevant minority that does. That relevant minority is not enough to say so you can never drink milk. You see, in the Torah you're allowed to drink milk. What does it mean? When an animal has been killed, you should check to make sure that it hasn't got this particular disease. It's called a mi'ut hamatsui. A mi'ut hamatsui, a relevant minority, so you've got a majority and you've got a relevant minority. It's not 95-5, it's not 96-4, it's 90-10. That's a relevant minority. You can't always ignore that. What we might be dealing with here in this Ritvo is exactly that idea which is teaching us in the Rashbam. It's true that most cases where a woman turns up at a Swiss bank with a suitcase full of cash, she's putting it away because she's insecure about her future, and it might technically or legally belong to her husband, so don't get involved. Your clerk did get involved and took it. Now what? Now we say, yes, there's a majority of the cases the woman is probably taking it from her husband. But there's a miyut hamatsui, there's more than 10% of cases where that's not true at all. It's absolutely her own money. And on the basis of a miyut hamatsui, you remain in sofek. When you've got an absolute rov, when you've got an absolute majority, the Torah tells you there's no sofek. Don't treat this as a doubt, treat this as certainty. When there's a majority that leaves a relevant minority, you remain in doubt, and until you've clarified the doubt, you don't act on it. You don't eat the meat until you've checked that the cow wasn't in fact ill. Even though it's only a relevant minority, it's not a majority of cows. If it was a majority of cows that had the illness, you wouldn't even check the cows. You would assume from the beginning that the cow isn't okay. So here too, in this situation, where we've got this strange din, on the one hand, ein מקבלין פקדונות מן הנשים. If a woman comes with a suitcase full of cash to the Swiss banker shouldn't accept the money. Why? Because most cases, as the Ritvo explains the Rashbam, in most cases, the money is illegitimate. However, if he took the money, he now returns the money to her, not to the husband, because this isn't an absolute majority on which you can act. Here there is a miyut hamatsui, there's a relevant minority, which requires that you stay in a state of safek, and we see from Bava Metzia Daf Chavhei that when you're in a state of doubt, a state of safek, when you found something and you don't know whether it's been put there or it's been lost, you've got to leave it where it is, leave the status quo as it is. That's what you do in a safek. When you're in doubt and you have no ability to resolve the doubt, stay in status quo. And that's what the Gemara advises us to do. Kibel min ha'isha, if your clerk took the money from the woman, yachzir li'isha, return it to the woman. And so as we begin to deal with these nuanced differences between suspicion and assumption, it's important in our own lives. We can't be naive and never suspect anybody of anything. We can't assume that. You can't assume that the government are tzaddikim and everything they do is for the public good. You can't be naive. They're politicians. But is that a suspicion or is it an assumption? That's what you've got to decide. Because if it's an assumption, you've got to become an activist. If it's a suspicion, you wait and see. You just leave things as they are. And so it is in our day-to-day lives with other people. Don't be naive. Be ready to suspect. But don't assume when all that you've got is a suspicion. And if it's only a suspicion, that shouldn't lead you to take action, which should simply lead you to stand back and let things unfold a little further.